Hi world, it's the 25th of February 2020, it's about 10 to 3 in the afternoon UK time. This is my astrological take on the horoscope of Bernie Sanders. Bernie Sanders was born on Monday, September the 8th, 1941 in Brooklyn Heights, New York. The birth time that is most given on most astrological websites is 12:27 p.m. I found no other time for him, but there is no documented proof of this birth time. It is a word of mouth birth time passed down over decades. It seems to be from a friend long ago, so I'm not convinced of this. Nevertheless, I feel that in the absence of anything better, it's a good enough birth time, and it does kind of fit his chart. Bernie Sanders is a Virgo with Scorpio rising and the moon in Aries. Now he's 79 at the moment. Is he 79 yet? Now he'll be 79 later this year. He's 78 at the moment, which makes him of a similar age to Donald Trump, if not slightly older. Now, Sanders' horoscope is actually quite nice. I understand why he's got the reputation he has for being quite left of centre in America. Certainly with the aspects in his chart, he has a strong square from Mercury. Is that Mercury in this chart? No, he has a strong square from Venus to Jupiter. A trine, from Venus to Jupiter, Venus in Libra to Jupiter in Gemini, that does give him very good media skills. But he was born at the time of the Saturn-Uranus conjunction at the end of Taurus. Now I have a number of clients with this who are of a similar age to him, and this generation, on the one hand, with Saturn-Uranus at the end of Taurus, this is the war generation. On the one hand, they were born in times where there was a great deal of compressed and concentrated change. And one of the things around Saturn-Uranus is that with Uranus conjunct Saturn, there's a revolutionizing of structure, the revolutionizing of limitations, the changing of boundaries from concrete and steel into transparent rubber and elastic, where you bend the rules instead of break them. Yeah, and the opposite side of this is with Saturn conjunct Uranus is the side that is anarchistic, but in a way that also brings in structure and boundary. So it's anarchistic in a acceptable way that is not too nihilistic. He's a guy who breaks the rules and then rewrites them, but without upsetting too many people. He bends the rules. There's a lot of Aries in his chart, with both the moon and Mars in Aries. So he's quite forthright, quite upfront. And one of the reasons why a lot of people like him is because he's what we in England we call WYSIWYG. What you see is what you get. Now this does terrify a lot of people in the higher echelons of the Democratic Party, who, steeped in the politics of the last 30 years, want someone who's going to obey the party diktat. But as the Republican Party has found out, be careful what you wish for, otherwise you end up with a maverick. Trump is a maverick, as is Sanders. Now, the sun in Sanders' chart is reasonably healthy. It's square Jupiter mildly, as is Neptune. Not too worried about this. Mercury at the very start of Libra in his chart is sextiling Pluto quite strongly, and this gives him the courage of his own convictions. It gives him a sense of inner depth psychology. This is a guy who walks his talk. There's a philosophy here that says that if you always tell the truth, then you never have to remember what you said. Now, I know there's ongoing investigations into his wife from years ago. I know that he could get into trouble, especially in Florida, with his support from many, many decades ago of Castro. I'm also aware, because I've been told by a number of people in America, that so many young people are voting for Sanders simply because he comes across as honest, uncomplicated, straightforward. He's not singing to any party line. And a number of people have said to me that if the youth don't vote for Sanders, they won't vote at all. Thing is, Bernie Sanders is 78 years old. He's already had a heart attack. Now, he won't release his medical records. Neither will Trump. Some people have said to me, yeah, but Trump hasn't had a heart attack. Sanders has. But then a number of people are suggesting that Trump has Pick's disease, which Sanders doesn't have. Sanders certainly has a brain and an intellect. There is a big but with Bernie Sanders' chart. He was born with Venus at 22 degrees of Libra and Mars retrograde at 23 degrees of Aries. He was born with Venus opposite Mars. Now, this in itself isn't a problem. In younger people, Venus opposite Mars is quite an attractive thing. Especially with Venus in Libra, its own sign, and Mars in Aries, its own sign. The problem here is not so much that this aspect exists, it's more what is happening to this aspect. Throughout 2020, Pluto in the sky is squaring Sanders' Venus and his Mars, as is Jupiter. Mars in the sky is going to square both his Venus and his Mars around the period of the 19th to the 23rd of March, which is going to be a critical time for the world. And then once Mars moves into Aries later this year, for 6 months instead of its normal 6 weeks, there will be an absolutely critical moment for Sanders around the 16th of October. The new moon at that time will be at 23 degrees of Libra, exactly opposite his Mars, and Saturn, Pluto and Jupiter in the sky will be squaring that new moon and his Mars. Now, bearing in mind that he has had a heart attack in the past, I am beginning to wonder if he's actually going to last the course. By this time of this new moon, he will be 79 years old. Looking at the dates of the Democratic Convention around I think it's the 13th to the 16th of July, when Mars is conjunct Chiron in the sky, the Sun in the sky is going to be opposite Jupiter and Saturn and Pluto. There's going to be a lot of backstabbing, double dealing. It's going to be a nasty event. If Sanders doesn't go there with enough first past the post votes and it goes to the superdelegates, he's obviously not going to win because the party machine will not want him to stand. If I were a betting man, which I'm not, I would suggest that Bernie Sanders will not be the Democratic candidate, which is going to upset a lot of people because a lot of people want him to stand because they see him as a breath of fresh air, someone who is honest, who tells the truth as he sees it, even if it's not to the liking of all people. Unlike almost every other politician of an age in America. Well, not just America, every country in the world. Anybody who wants power should be denied it. I don't think Sanders will stand. I think his health is going to catch up with him. I think he's going to go through burnout. By the time he gets into October, I think his health may have caught up with him. And if he does stand and he does take on Trump, yes, he has a good potential to win. But then America will be faced with a guy who will be in his early 80s when he's president. Don't think there's ever been a president that old. It's going to be interesting. It's going to be interesting. Okay, that's my take on Bernie Sanders. I hope some of you have found it interesting.